Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
I wish I've never seen you. The blonde woman hissed with hatred, gazing at her newborn daughter. The passing nurse scolded the blonde woman angrily. Oh, Lord! Enlighten this sinner. How can you speak like this? She's an innocent child. The nanny walked away, and the young mother looked at her daughter's serene face and repeated in a whisper, I wish I've never seen you. After these words, she burst into tears. Life was ruined completely. She was only 22 years old. And the reason was lying there, sleeping and snoring. The father of this little girl, a wonderful and charming owner of the by-the-road snack bar, was a practical man. Did I promise you anything? No. Well, then solve your problems yourself, he said. Idiot! She shouted. And don't expect me to return your car. Did you give it to me as a gift? Well, I'll keep it for myself, you scoundrel. Enjoy your ride, he smiled. Alba was so furious at his careless indifference that she wanted to run him over with the car right away. And in the women's consultation room, she was tormented with the referral for an abortion. When she finally held the coveted piece of paper in her hands, it was as useless. Get out! Barked the gynecologist aunt at her. Couldn't you come earlier? I couldn't, the pregnant woman murmured. They didn't give me the referral, they kept stalling. How could I come earlier? You couldn't come earlier, and you can't come now either. Get out! And then there was a friend who mentioned an old granny who lived in the suburbs and could help if she brought money and groceries right away. Bring them and promise to keep quiet. The granny lived in a private house on the outskirts of the suburb and, in general, was not very polite. How far along are you? She asked sternly, and upon hearing the answer, she repeated what the gynecologist had already said. Look at her. They must have told you that the granny is ancient and can't think properly anymore. But I've been working as a gynecologist for 30 years. Now you came, pretending you don't understand. Do you even know why you came here? You need a full surgical procedure. Where were you before, you good-for-nothing lousy? They returned to the city in silence. Don't grieve so, Alba, her friend tried to reassure her. Maybe it will resolve itself somehow. Yeah, at 3 months, the girl responded gloomily. Maybe it won't resolve itself, but having a child isn't bad either. They say it rejuvenates the body. Yeah, definitely. And cabbage makes your breasts grow. She didn't feel any tenderness or love for the child, and it seemed like the child knew it too, tormenting the future mother with constant nausea, swelling, and low blood pressure. To top it all off, her once flawless skin was now covered in acne, and she didn't want to look at herself in the mirror. But if she had to, it ended with a stream of tears and intense self-hatred. I'm a monster, she repeated in horror, examining her blurred figure. There's no waist left, and my legs have become as thick as an elephant's. My ankles are swollen, they're the size of knees now. And my breasts? They're growing, a peasant woman has the same. Alba used to be proud of her slender, delicate figure and rejoiced in the fact that she could eat whatever her heart desired without gaining an ounce. And her hair? It used to be so full and long, like a mermaid's, but now it was so damaged that she had to cut off 20 centimeters. And for some reason, they always looked dirty, no matter how often she washed them. Think about the child, everyone around her insisted. But Alba wanted to scream. Why? Why should I think about this child? I didn't want it, and I still don't. I'm only going to give birth because they didn't give me an abortion referral for so long. And all of you, like mad people, keep saying think about the child, think about the child. Well, you think about it since you're so clever. With endless tears and anxieties, Alba pushed the situation to the point where she was immediately taken to the maternity ward for observation after her latest consultation. Her blood pressure was skyrocketing, forcing her to spend a whole day in the intensive care unit, hooked up to 4 drips. But giving birth turned out to be easy. Before Alba could even get scared, the midwife was already showing her the baby girl. You have such a beautiful little one. Look, she takes after you, the midwife said. But the mother didn't want to look. She closed her eyes and turned her head away, just in case. Well, the midwife brusquely encouraged her. It happens, nothing to worry about. You'll rest, recover, and love will come. Don't worry, you'll find joy in your daughter eventually. She didn't find joy then, or later, or ever. The baby wouldn't sleep at night, and the mother would sit by the crib for hours, rocking her. For some reason, holding the child was unpleasant for her. And amidst these sleepless nights and half-asleep tired days, one persistent thought occupied her mind. Why didn't I leave her at the maternity ward? I would be free as the wind by now. It was frustrating to realize that life was passing her by. Sunny spring days lingered outside, and if it weren't for her daughter, she could go for a walk, watch a new movie, leisurely eat some fruit ice cream in the park. But money? So much money was now being spent on a screaming child whom no one wanted, not the father, nor the mother. Alba bit her lip to keep from shouting in anger every time she entered a store. If she were free, she could buy everything here, well, almost everything. And certainly that black dress and crimson shoes, and those brand new perfumes that had just come into fashion. To avoid disappointment, she had stopped looking into any stores except for grocery ones. I'm a loser, the young mother thought in despair, a wretched, half-poor, unwanted loser. Alba firmly believed that from now on, her life was destined to be a dreary crawl from the children's playground to the store and back home. Daily. Constantly. Forever. With no chance of reprieve. When her little girl turned 2, a miracle happened. An interesting man of a certain age noticed Alba. He exuded a calm strength and significant possibilities. Could it be that luck has finally smiled on me? She thought with a fluttering heart. In Alba's dreams, she already saw herself in a snow-white dress, holding a huge bouquet of flowers. Walking hand in hand with her respectable husband, she would sit in an elegant black car after the wedding. They would go on their honeymoon, and when they returned, a beautifully decorated apartment would await them. Or even better, not just an apartment, but a whole house, something light and airy, with large windows to let in plenty of air. She could start living like a proper human being, pursue some unusual hobbies, wear beautiful dresses at home, and eagerly await her husband's return from work in the evenings. And then, piercing through her sweet dreams, came the cry of a child. Again. Was this clumsy Anna again falling or bumping into something, or burning herself? I wonder, do all children constantly try to harm themselves, or was Alba just unlucky in that regard? Get up, she scolded her crying daughter. Get up, my little troublemaker, let's get dressed and go for a walk. Dressing the child, by the way, was a separate ordeal. The wretched girl refused to stand still and kept squirming around. Will you stand still or not? Alba yelled. Why do you torment me like this, you little brat? Come on, stand still, don't move. The girl froze in fear. Her eyes were round and blue. Just like her idiot father, Alba thought, the same round, huge, and dull eyes. The memories made her mood even worse, and Alba roughly pulled her daughter by the collar. Let's go. No, wait. She tore a sheet of paper from her notebook and quickly scribbled a few words on it. She put the piece of paper in a bag along with a bun and a bottle of water. Here, now let's go. Move, you damn brat, she shouted, grabbing the little girl's hand and dragging her along. The strip of forest was nearby, and it was wonderful. Alba was glad that she wouldn't have to go through the whole city with the child, spending money on public transport. In fact, she wanted to get it over with as quickly as possible. The girl loved the forest. Squatting down, she watched with curiosity as a ladybug crawled along a blade of grass. Alba's brain was working feverishly fast. Take her far away, where no one will find her. But they will find the body, and then they will trace it back to me. It's better to leave her here, maybe someone will find her. Yes, I need to urgently rent an apartment in a different area, today, where nobody knows me, and rent out my own place. It needs to be done quickly, very quickly. Anna, she called out to her daughter, stay here and wait, I'll be back soon. And she walked away, pretending to head towards the nearest bushes, but actually moving further away towards where she had left the car. The farther Alba walked away from her daughter, the greater the joy filled her being. Freedom. Could it be that she had finally begged fate for a chance at freedom? Could she really come home right now and throw away all the child's belongings? Was she finally free? Yvonne didn't remember how she ended up in the orphanage. And one could even consider it a kind of luck. At least she never felt the longing for a home that plagued other children. They were all taken from alcoholic parents or lost their mothers and fathers early on, and they longed for something Yvonne comforted them for, crying secretly, not opening their hearts to anyone. And every time she wiped their tears and hugged them, she thought about how lucky she was. They found her, a 2-year-old girl, as the caregivers told her, all alone in the forest with a little bag containing a bun, a chewed-up plush lion, and a note. The girl's name is Anna. She is healthy and not fussy. Take care of her because I can't. A local forester found the little girl and later recounted that he discovered her near the edge of the forest. Just after he stepped onto the road with the freezing child in his arms, he immediately heard the sound of a departing car and even managed to notice that it was a white car. But whose car it was and what the license plate number was remained a mystery, and for the next few years, no one attempted to solve it. By evening, the man brought the girl to the nearest shelter, where a kind-hearted nanny gave her warm coffee with sandwiches, bathed her, and put her in an empty bed. In those times, there were many sad stories like this one. They changed the girl's name, as they always did with foundlings, to change their destiny for the better, and Anna became Yvonne, a resident of the orphanage and an official orphan. Yvonne, however, had a good life. The director of the orphanage belonged to that rare breed of people for whom their work was a calling. She demanded the same fanaticism from the entire staff, and only those who prioritized the happiness and comfort of the little children stayed there. So, in the orphanage, there were affectionate nannies, strict but fair caregivers, and together they created an atmosphere that resembled a family. Later, when Yvonne grew up, she often heard that children from orphanages were wild, socially maladjusted, and firmly believed that the whole world owed them due to their orphanhood. It was said that you could easily recognize a former orphan by their lack of understanding of cleanliness or washing dishes. But Yvonne's childhood was not like that. First and foremost, this orphanage, or as the adults preferred to call it, the children's institution, was privately owned. A couple who had dedicated half their lives to working in state-run orphanages decided to open a private one in the 1990s, the first of its kind in the region. They had to act at their own risk. Not only were they afraid of gangsters at that time, but they also lacked any support from friends and acquaintances. Do you want to profit from children's misery? That was the mildest of the comments the couple heard from those they considered friends, and what was even more hurtful was that they even heard it from relatives. We had to grit our teeth and move forward, supporting each other and learning on the go, or else we would have to abandon all our plans right away. However, the racketeers, unlike our neighbors, friends, and relatives, embraced the new project in the field with almost enthusiasm. Charging tribute from the dedicated founders of the shelter was strictly prohibited, but all kinds of support and assistance were encouraged. Of course, the racketeering kings pursued their own interests in this matter. Firstly, charity was a good way to launder money. But most importantly, the majority had already realized that the gangster free-for-all would soon come to an end, and those who were smarter began to transfer their assets into legitimate businesses, as there was traditionally more trust in businessmen who generously donated to charity. There was another significant difference about the shelter compared to others. Vocational education was the norm here. Of course, familiar faces consumed by fierce envy of the thriving venture immediately raised objections regarding the use of child labor. But all those who came to inspect left with nothing to complain about. All safety rules were followed, and no exhausted children were found. Teresa Iglesias, the beloved superintendent, established reasonable order. The statistics on orphanage graduates, she said to everyone who came to apply for a job, can frighten anyone. Approximately 10% manage to find their way in life. 40% become alcoholics, drug addicts, or prisoners. Why does this happen? There are many reasons, but one of them seems particularly important to me. In most children's homes, technicians do the cleaning, cooks prepare the food, and housekeepers take care of the clothing and shoes. As a result, grown-up children find themselves helpless. They don't know how or even understand why it's necessary to clean the house or prepare a meal. In the end, they don't even have the basic understanding of how to budget for a month. Spending all the money in the first 2 or 3 days and then borrowing from acquaintances until the end of the month is normal for them. That's why we have implemented a system of vocational education in our institution. Children must understand that in the adult world, no one will owe them anything. Here, our children learn to independently maintain cleanliness, cook, and the older ones earn their first money and learn how to manage it. Some admired these methods, while others did not accept them, but the headmistress remained unwavering. We are raising not future dependents, not prison population, but full-fledged members of society. Our goal is to release into the world a person who will work and value the work of others, someone who will create a family and become a responsible parent. Starting from the age of 7, the children tidied up their rooms every weekend, and in addition, they took turns working in the kitchen, helping with dishwashing and cooking. Each room was awarded bonus points, and at the end of the week, the winners could exchange their points for sweets, other purchases, or a trip somewhere. High school students were given the opportunity to earn extra money. There was a large garden on the adjacent territory. During the winter, when there was nothing to do in the garden, the children were offered to clear the snow or do some minor repairs under the guidance of a mentor. Although this type of vocational education did not always meet with enthusiastic responses, the graduates still thanked Teresa for not releasing them into the big world as savages even years later. And Yvonne was grateful to both her shelter and Teresa that she didn't get confused in her independent life. She had a small but cozy apartment provided by the government. And she quickly found a job. At first, Yvonne worked as a processed foods maker in a factory, then she spent some time as a cashier in a supermarket, and later she got a job at a veterinary clinic. The work there was calmer. She only needed to schedule appointments for clients and handle payments. She worked there for a whole year, taking a break from the hustle and bustle and the need to constantly be on the move. Yvonne really liked the clinic, and the idea of becoming a veterinarian even crossed her mind. And perhaps everything would have been very feasible if it weren't for one small, yet significant but. Olivio appeared in the veterinary clinic like a ray of sunshine. He was a fair-haired, 2-meter-tall giant who resembled a Viking, and he had a small ginger kitten that seemed unbelievably tiny in his massive hands. "I found this cat on the street," he said with concern. "Look, is she okay?" She seemed scared, poor thing. His voice was enveloping, thick, like warm honey. Yvonne couldn't resist and reached out to stroke the cat. She probably didn't need any help. She was peacefully dozing, comfortably settled on her savior's broad chest. When Yvonne's hand touched her, the kitty lazily opened her golden eyes. "I'll go get the doctor right away," the girl said. "Just wait a moment." Only one of the 4 doctors was available, and Yvonne was very glad that the only one happened to be a man. The ladies would have surely flirted with the charming visitor, and then... What would have happened then? Yvonne didn't have time to think, as the man already walked out of the office, and his ginger companion settled back to sleep. "Everything is fine," Yvonne smiled. "Thank God. How much should I pay for the examination?" Yvonne quickly entered all the owner's information into the computer and printed out the examination report. While he was paying, she thought about what else she could talk about with this endearing giant. "Olivio," she asked, "are you going to keep the kitty?" He gently blew on the cat's ear. "Is there any other way out? I'll bring her for vaccinations in 2 weeks. We should come up with a name for her. Maybe you can come up with something?" "She's golden-eyed, ginger, like honey," Yvonne smiled. "Perhaps she needs a sweet name. Sunshine?" The Viking raised an eyebrow and immediately laughed at his own joke. "No, too long. Honey, yes, let's call her Honey. She's so sweet. Well, let's go home, little honey. Goodbye. He squinted and read the name on Ivan's badge. Ivan, see you in 2 weeks. 14 days later, Olivio stepped into the veterinary clinic through the door that was wide open to summer heat. In his arms, a well-groomed and noticeably rounder Honey glistened with her red golden fur. Good day, he smiled radiantly. Ivan's heart skipped a beat. In the past 2 weeks, the impression Olivio had made on her had faded a little. Why am I getting all worked up? She asked herself. So what if he's an attractive guy? It's not like he's the only one. Nevertheless, she had been looking forward to this day. She had set aside some money and visited a beauty salon to get a manicure. The hairdressers convinced her to get highlights, and it turned out to be a good decision. Now her hair had twice more volume and looked beautifully shimmered in the sunlight. Ivan even started wearing a touch of makeup when going to work, although she used to consider it unnecessary. She also started wearing her few pieces of jewelry, a simple silver ring and earrings with small transparent stones. The earrings were a gift from the shelter manager for her excellent performance, and the ring was a present from a sponsor for International Women's Day. Now, when meeting the Viking like Olivio, Ivan felt like a beauty. And here is Honey, coming for her vaccination, she said, approaching to stroke the cat. How have you been? Has the kitty settled into the house? Technically, she could have waited for Olivio to come closer to the reception desk, but Ivan wanted to show off her slender figure, which couldn't be hidden by the uniform. Olivio gave her an appreciative glance as he passed by. She has settled in nicely. It's very enjoyable. It gets lonely living alone, but having a kitten waiting at home changes that. Ivan sensed a hidden meaning in his words. I understand, she sighed. I live alone too, and sometimes it gets really lonely. Olivia winked at her. Well, you should come over sometime. When you feel bored, just give me a call. You have my contact data, after all. It feels a bit awkward, she blushed. What's awkward about it? Olivio nobly protested. Come over, and Honey and I will be eagerly waiting for you. That evening, Ivan met up with her best friend Nora to discuss the news. She had known Nora for a long time, ever since they were in the orphanage together. Nora had ended up there at the age of 10 when she was taken away from her alcoholic and bitter father. On her first night in the orphanage, the little girl buried her nose in the corner of the pillow and blissfully said, How nice it is here. Startled, Ivan sat down on the bed. Wow, it's unusual, she exclaimed. Other kids cry for a whole week and can't calm down, and you're saying it's nice here. What's wrong with it? Nora asked in surprise. The bed is clean, the food is tasty, and no one drinks alcohol. It's good, isn't it? The next day, Nora shared her story with Ivan. She told her about begging on the streets to beg money for her father's alcohol, as he would beat her if she didn't. She talked about the time her father disappeared somewhere, and she went 3 days without eating. It was only when she fainted at school that they took her to the hospital, and from there, she was brought to the orphanage. They said that my dad went to get treatment for his alcoholism, she snorted. They say once he gets better, he'll find a job and take me home. They're lying as if I were a little child. He won't quit drinking. Well, Ivan pondered thoughtfully, maybe he really wants to get better. We had a girl here, Julia, whose mother stopped drinking and took Julia back. Now they come to visit us every Saturday and bring candies. That's not about my dad, Nora said sadly. He will never stop drinking. But she was mistaken. Nora's father did undergo treatment at a drug rehabilitation center and permanently forbade himself from even thinking about alcohol. Moreover, he found a job and visited his daughter every evening. After 6 months, he was able to take her home for good. Nora's father turned out to be a talented carpenter and often came to the orphanage with his daughter, bringing some new gift each time, new chairs for the little ones, long benches for the dining hall. One time, he even built 10 wardrobes for the children's rooms and refused to accept any payment for his work, despite Teresa's insistence. "You took care of my little girl," he said, tears of remorse and shame welling up in his eyes. He never stopped blaming himself for the past. When Nora turned 18, her father passed away. Some bullies attacked him one evening as he was walking home from work and beat him severely. He died right there from his injuries. Nora inherited her father's apartment, but she had no job. Once again, Teresa came to her rescue, helping Nora attend courses for secretaries and hiring her at her own workplace. However, she didn't stay long. "They don't pay well here, and there's no future," she told Ivan. "There are plenty of places looking for secretaries. I'll find a job in some company where the boss is a man, you know what I mean. I want to live like a human being, not toil for an idea." Eventually, Nora did manage to find her dream job. The idyll lasted for 3 months until one morning in the 4th month, the boss's wife stormed into their office like an enraged fury. The boss, who had been savoring his morning coffee, had the attractive secretary on his lap. That morning, Nora was left without a job and also lost a few strands of hair and 3 broken nails in the process. Nora spent a whole month without work, nursing her bruises and complaining to Ivan about the injustice of fate. She declined the job offer at the veterinary clinic that her friend had suggested. But luck was on her side once again. Her next employer was a widower, so she didn't have to worry about jealous wives. Since then, Nora had managed to renovate her apartment and even acquire her own, albeit inexpensive, car. She and Ivan continued to be friends, although Ivan pretended not to notice Nora's increasing arrogance. "I don't know what to do, Nora," she confessed that evening. "I met one person. Did you not notice if he was in his own car or something?" Nora interrupted. "How was he dressed? Was he wearing designer clothes or from the mass market?" "His clothes were just clothes," Ivan frowned. "I understand nothing in brands, and I don't know what car he has." Nora sighed with frustration. "When will you learn to pay attention to such things? It's very important. A charming face is one thing, but what if he doesn't have any other qualities besides a cute appearance? Then what? What does that have to do with anything? Are we supposed to evaluate every person we meet based on whether they're rich or poor? Well, is it better to waste time with a pauper, live on a pittance, and admire his handsome face until he starts cheating? Okay, in any case, you should take the opportunity. Visit him, see where he lives, and how. Don't hesitate, act." Although Nora tried to push her friend towards action, it had the opposite effect. Ivan decided that nothing would make her call or visit Olivio. After her conversation with Nora, she started to think that if she accepted the Viking's invitation, she would inevitably start paying attention to his clothing, furniture, and whether it was worth spending time on him or not. But a week later, Olivio himself appeared at the clinic towards the end of the workday, with his cat. "Is something wrong?" Ivan asked, surprised. "Is the cat sick?" "Fortunately, she's perfectly fine," Viking said with satisfaction. "But we got tired of waiting for you to call us. So, honey and I talked it over and decided to invite you to our place today. I'm telling the truth, right, honey?" The cat let out a short meow. "You see," Olivio continued enthusiastically, "honey wouldn't lie. Ivan, please, or at least to let me escort you home." He looked so charming, this tall blonde with a cat in his arms. Who could refuse him? Certainly not Ivan. That evening, walking down the street next to Olivio, the girl felt like a queen or at least a rock star's chosen one. All the women around involuntarily paused when they saw the fair-haired giant, and he seemed oblivious to their admiring glances. He must have been used to them for a long time, far too long. But in reality, Olivio saw and noticed everything, and the admiring looks always pleased him. However, now he needed to make an impression on Ivan, and he tried hard. Mentally, he called the girl my little great chance. And she shouldn't know too early that Olivio was buried in debt, unable to repay it in a lifetime, and it was all because of the computer games where he continuously wasted his entire salary. No, he wasn't addicted, he was just passionate about it. The prize funds in those games were not like working for meager wages, they were big enough to pay off debts and have some capital left until old age. So Yvonne was the chance. She worked in a decent clinic, one of the best in the city, which meant she should have her finances in order. Well, she wasn't a millionaire, of course, not even close, but at least she should have enough money to support him until he reached the prize funds, and who knows what might happen after that. If the girl turned out to be suitable, maybe he would even marry her. But now it was too early to rush. If she found out what he was truly interested in, he wouldn't stand a chance. Therefore, he had to behave carefully. Today, he would be the faithful fool who noticed nothing except the object of his passion. That was his role for the day. Olivia suddenly thought tenderly about Honey. That's his true battle buddy. How many times he tormented her with hunger for 2 or 3 days, soiled her honey-colored fur, and dragged her to various veterinary clinics, pretending she was a poor wretch miraculously rescued from a pack of dogs. Why? Well, at least because veterinarians, if they're the good ones, earn a good living, and there are many women among them. And a hungry, dirty cat in the arms of an impressive giant is touching and endearing. And Honey endured all these abuses without complaint and continued to love her owner. I should buy her some treats, he thought tenderly. Why are you smiling? Yvonne asked. Oh, just thinking about Honey. Let's go to the store, I want to treat the kitty to something delicious. Of course, let's go. Yvonne was now the happiest girl in the world. 3 months passed. No, Yvonne. We didn't agree on this, Olivia grinned crookedly upon seeing the certificate from the Women's Consultation Center. You were supposed to think about how to avoid pregnancy. He looked horribly self-assured. He looked at his girlfriend condescendingly, like a wise adult looks at a mischievous child. You can't fool me, but I'm not angry at you, his gaze clearly conveyed. And this condescension was so disgusting that Yvonne lowered her head just to avoid seeing it. So that's how it is, apparently. That's how pregnancy should have been avoided. Why didn't they discuss it from the beginning? But didn't you have to think about anything? The girl asked. Children are the result of 2 people's action. I'm a man, he simply replied. After all, it's not me who has to walk around pregnant for 9 months and give birth. And raising the child alone is not my responsibility either. I only have to pay child support, and even then, it's not much. So pregnancy and everything related to it is a woman's concern. This foolish reasoning made Yvonne even more disgusted. Sometimes it happens. It seems like a person is reasoning logically, consistently, and yet you listen and understand that he's just a coward. I thought we were in love, she said sadly. You said you loved me. Don't you remember? I remember saying it. But I never said I wanted to have children, Olivia remarked. Why are you lumping everything together? And, to be honest, he wasn't lying. They never discussed children, but Yvonne felt like one thing implied the other. St. Teresa and the wonderful orphanage team taught their charges to take care of themselves and others, not relying on government assistance, and to earn a living independently. But how do you learn to beware of human irresponsibility, thoughtlessness, and plain dishonesty? Yvonne, Olivia began, noticing his friend's disappointment. Let's talk honestly. We don't have much time left together, and it's too early to talk about real love, at most, infatuation, fascination, passion. But let's agree on that. Maybe so, Yvonne didn't object. Most likely that's the case. But don't you understand that the situation has changed? Our I love you, I don't love you is now secondary. There's a child. The child already exists. And as parents, we need to think about their future, not our own whims. We can work it out. Neither of us needs this child right now. Get rid of it, and we can continue dating, getting to know each other, and who knows, maybe someday. I was also abandoned, his girlfriend interrupted. I was not needed by my father or mother, so they took me to the woods. Well, that's just sheer brutality, Olivia exclaimed in horror. But to prevent it from getting to that point. Listen, what's 5 weeks? It's just a cluster of cells. But if we don't take action, it can ruin both our lives. You want us to reach an agreement, and here I am, trying to negotiate, and it doesn't suit you. Isn't reaching an agreement, Yvonne burst out, supposed to mean finding a solution that would satisfy everyone? You want to be happy. But what about me? It's not you, but me who has to go through an abortion. And you want to compensate by continuing our relationship and maybe marrying someday. And do you think I'll need a relationship with a betrayer? I'm not a betrayer, I'm honestly expressing my desires. And if you decide to give birth, you should know, I won't want to continue the relationship, Yvonne, I won't want it. Such rashness is not part of my plans. Of course, you'll file for child support, and I'll have to pay for something I didn't want and don't want. Imagine going to a store, looking at something, and they won't let you leave until you pay for it. Is that fair? You don't even have money with you, you just came in to wait out the rain, but no, they make you pay. It's unfair, finally. And what if you went into a store, took a bite of a pastry, and they made you pay for it? Would that be fair? Don't twist things, Yvonne. And besides, what about yourself? Fine, my well-being doesn't factor into your calculations, I've already understood that. But what about you? You won't get substantial child support. You wanted to study. But if you decide to keep the child, what about your education? Think about it. I'm asking you, think it through properly. I've already thought about everything, the girl said firmly and looked directly into his handsome face. Love was gone. It was washed away by the wave of cold cynicism from Olivia, all his supposedly reasonable arguments, which were actually just meant to disguise his fear that now his cozy, peaceful life would change. And what did I ever see in you? She asked softly. Look at you, you're so big and strong, but inside, you're a little boy who's afraid of everything. You are, Olivia, just afraid of it all. All you could manage was to pick up a stray cat. You don't want to know your own child. Relax, you fool, don't cry, we don't need your child support. She left without even closing the door behind her. Olivia rubbed his forehead and smiled, relieved. He was genuinely grateful to Yvonne for her pride. If she says she doesn't need child support, it means she won't ask for it. It was a relief, and he had already started thinking about how to reduce the amount he would have to pay from his income. He would have to negotiate at work to have a certificate drawn up showing a meager salary, and that was so tiresome. In general, Olivia definitely got it wrong with Yvonne. He thought that since the girl worked at a well-known clinic, she probably had a good salary and a nice apartment. The biggest disappointment was that when he was checking information about the clinic, he found photos of its owner, Alba Vasquez, on the internet. And when he saw Yvonne, he nearly collapsed. The young receptionist was uncannily like Alba. Olivia was sure that Yvonne was the daughter of the clinic's owner. Perhaps her mother decided that her beloved daughter should work under supervision. Why not? The job wasn't dusty, and who would harm their own child with the salary? And in the future, the girl would become the owner of the clinic. No doubt, it was an excellent option. Who knew she was a former orphan, and her salary was barely enough to get by? And the apartment was a small one-bedroom, without any renovations in the last 100 years. Although Yvonne tries to improve her impoverished dwelling, plastering here, sticking tiles there, so to speak, it's poor but clean. She even put up new wallpaper. Poverty can't be hidden, after all, it seeps through every crack, persistent and brazen. But that's for those who know how to look. In short, it's good that they managed to get rid of Yvonne without any additional complications. He didn't need a pregnant orphan, after all. Meanwhile, Yvonne felt the need to talk to someone, to try to find a way out of this hopeless situation. Nora, upon learning about her friend's pregnancy, almost went into hysterics. "Why are you so naive?" she shouted. "They all tell about love as long as they want something from you, but as soon as their tail gets caught, they immediately say, "No, no, no, I don't owe you anything, I never promised you anything." And their eyes are wide with fear. Exactly, Yvonne smirked. Like a cat's eyes, big and round. Oh, Yvonne, her friend shook her head in dismay. You should have at least consulted with me. Do you know how the men are? Like stray puppies, they need to be slowly and gradually tamed, without pressure. And you just went ahead and whacked them on the head. Well, let's think about how to deal with this. And how? I'll give birth and raise the child. Give birth? Nora repeated. Are you serious, Yvonne? Do you realize what you're getting into? All right, let's not panic. I know a good clinic where everything is confidential and safe. I'll take you there. I will give birth, the girl stubbornly repeated. I've already made up my mind. It's not too late to change your mind. While you still can. But you have to understand, it's like, I don't know, even when you consider getting a kitten, you think 100 times about it, and here it's a child. So that's why you don't have any cats? Yvonne smiled. Are you afraid of responsibility? It's not that I'm afraid, I just realistically evaluate my capabilities, nor I've corrected her. Even if we think about it, this Olivio of yours, he's a jerk, of course, but only because he didn't discuss all these unexpected things with you and how to avoid them. But in general, he's right. You don't know each other well enough to get married. You wanted to study, and he doesn't want anything. And what about children for you? He's not right because he didn't warn you in advance, but otherwise, his behavior is more responsible than yours. Because you. Okay, Nora, stop it, Yvonne interrupted her. I heard you. Well, listen, her friend softened. You know, I can't help you. My kilo gives me a little money, just enough to get by. And I have to take care of myself, manicures, eyebrows, eyelashes. Plus, I need nice underwear, otherwise, he'll scold me for that too. And what should I do then? Should I go to work on an ordinary job? Many people do just that. Yes, but who are they? Who's used to bowing down? Who's willing to work like a dog for a stale piece of bread? I don't want that for myself. If someone likes it, well, good for them. But you know, I'm used to living in comfort. Yes, I know, Yvonne reassured her. Don't worry, Nora, don't blame yourself, everything will be fine. Can I go now? I have to get up early for work. But a new surprise awaited her at work. Yvonne, the clinic owner, stopped her at the entrance. Come to my office, we need to talk. Right now, it's urgent. Actually, the fact that the owner in the clinic came there by herself was an extraordinary event. Alba rarely appeared here, preferring to conduct business from home, thank God for modern means of communication. Besides, she often left an administrator in her place and went with her daughter to warm countries. We have a very long winter, she would say. We need to find a way to take a break from it. In the owner's absence, all affairs were taken care of by her ex-husband, Giorgio. They said that he used to be a wealthy man. It was during those carefree times that he married the beauty Alba, who was a couple of decades younger than him. He was flattered that his young wife, who was only 20 compared to his 40, was the winner of a city beauty contest. He organized the contest himself as a wedding gift for her. To prevent Alba from getting bored, he bought a failing business from a friend at a low price and gave it to his wife. Alba reluctantly embarked on the venture, but unexpectedly got involved. She wanted her veterinary clinic to become the best in town, and she achieved that by using her husband's money and listening to his advice. But then dark times befell Giorgio, and his own business went under. Taking his stepbrother as a manager, Giorgio discovered a few months later that he had been swindled. Alba, taking their newborn daughter, instantly ran off to his brother. The bankrupt businessman decided that he had had enough of dangerous games and started working in a regular carpentry workshop. Naturally, he had less money, but at least his sleep became healthy. Alba, on the other hand, didn't enjoy marital bliss with her second husband for long. The money was squandered, and the careless owner himself ended up in prison for burglary. Disoriented and unhappy, Alba tried to return to Giorgio, but he refused to accept her. However, he didn't refuse to help if she needed someone to look after things at the veterinary clinic. Why did he do that? Out of mercy? Out of pity for the unfortunate ex? Or out of concern for their daughter? No one knew. But today, Alba personally appeared at the clinic and, moreover, spoke with the regular receptionist. It was doubly unusual. Until this moment, she only condescended to speak with the doctors. The office was already set with a tea table adorned with sweets. "Help yourself," the owner invited. "Thank you, Alba, but I just had breakfast." "You said it was something urgent." "Yes, indeed," she smiled insincerely, and Ivan immediately understood that she wouldn't hear anything good. "You grew up in an orphanage?" Alba asked. "I did. I always thought," the boss said thoughtfully, "that children from orphanages are so helpless. And you, it seems, know the ins and outs of life." "We had a special orphanage," Ivan smiled. "We were taught everything: cooking, cleaning, and even earning money." "Teresa, our supervisor." "Teresa Iglesias?" Alba asked. I know her well. We went to the same school, even in the same class. She was always so compassionate and kind. I remember all the stray dogs knew her because she fed them. Though, after school, we didn't keep in touch, but I've heard about the orphanage. Sometimes I even regret not sending my princess to be raised by her. "Who?" "My daughter Felicia," the woman sighed. "You know," she said in a confidential tone, "she's already 17, and she still can't even slice bread on her own. She seems to know where the money comes from, but how it's earned. She texted me today, 'Mommy, I'm going shopping with my friends, transfer 30 to 35,000 to my card.' 30,000 is like nothing to her. Well, tell me, what kind of world is she even living in? The real one? Or some fairy tale about the golden antelope?" Alba fell silent and angrily brushed a strand of hair from her face. "That's why I decided to follow your Teresa's example and teach her the value of hard work. What do you think? Is it a good idea?" Ivan looked at her boss in confusion. She wondered why the woman suddenly decided to seek advice from a regular worker. "Work education benefits everyone, so it's an excellent idea," Ivan replied. "I think so too," Alba rejoiced. "I've decided to hire that airhead. Let her start her work career under my supervision. For starters, she can sit at the registration desk. You'll train her in everything. Sound good? And once she learns everything, I'll give her a full-time position. By that time, you can find something else for yourself. You'll have enough time." "Stop." Ivan abruptly interrupted her boss, surprising even herself. "Are you saying you want me to leave?" "Well, yes," Alba shrugged. "My Felicia needs somewhere to work. What's the point of keeping both of you? I want Felicia to learn to earn money for her own pocket expenses. And if she only works part-time, how much will she earn?" Tears. "Well, that's settled, Ivan. Will you train Felicia?" "Well, how else?" The girl smiled. "Of course, I'll train her and then quit so that your idler daughter has something to do. Don't count on me to stick around, Alba, I won't do that. Don't be rude to me. You're still working for me, remember?" "Not anymore. I'll decide that, not you. How dare you talk to me like this? And how dare you treat people like that? You're required to work for another 2 weeks." The boss shouted. Where did all her charm go? Her smooth, well-groomed face, made for smiles and successful photographs, suddenly became frozen, like a mask, and only her lips twisted in an ugly manner while her eyes burned with wild anger, like that of a mistress whose serf had suddenly disobeyed her. "You're legally obligated. Are you even aware that there is such a thing as the labor code?" Ivan suddenly understood why Alba's face looked so terrifying. After all, she couldn't even frown due to her Botox injections. And this lack of expression, combined with the malicious gaze and shrill voice, was more frightening than anything. The labor code, have you ever heard of it? And have you heard of the procedures for hiring and firing? Have you ever signed an employment contract with me? No, I work unofficially so that you, Alba, can pay fewer taxes. So don't frighten me, it's pointless. I don't owe you anything, and I'm leaving immediately. Good luck adapting your Felicia to real life. But I have connections, Alba hissed behind her. It's easy to forge a contract and your signature. Go ahead, Yvonne agreed almost cheerfully. And I have the tax office's number, I can tell them a lot of interesting things. But despite her apparent bravado, Yvonne left the clinic almost in despair. Had the whole world conspired against her? Everyone had turned away, everyone, her loved one, her friend. And now she had no job either. So where should she go now, dear God? What should she do now? Go home, Yvonne sternly commanded herself. As for what to do, we'll figure it out later. Right now, go home. Make coffee and think everything through thoroughly. But home was only slightly more comfortable. It was uncomfortable to sit alone within four walls. She wanted to talk to someone. Not to complain, but just to be close to someone living, to hear a human voice. Suddenly, the girl felt a strong desire to visit her orphanage, probably just like an adult person can yearn for their childhood home, for their parents in difficult situations. But Yvonne had no parents. The director greeted her joyfully, as she did with all her wards. And Yvonne, who simply wanted to spend some time in familiar surroundings, didn't even notice how she told everything about Olivio, their passionate romance, even about his cat Honey and his foolish conscientiousness and responsibility, which now left her to raise the child alone. Well, so what if the fool ran off? Teresa laughed sincerely. Let him go far away. What's he good for? And don't lose heart. What are you to us, a stranger? We'll help. You'll study and work and earn money. And that fool will regret it. I probably won't be able to study, Yvonne said. I'll have to work. I can't just sit on welfare together with the baby. And as for work, maybe I can somehow arrange to take the child with me or pay the neighbor to look after him. But what about studying? Yes, the director agreed. You'll need a good nanny to study. But it can be solved, don't worry, we'll find a solution. Leave the baby here while you're studying, we'll figure something out. When you come back, pick him up. And as for work, even if they fire you from your veterinary clinic, you can always come here. I'll hire you as a cook, and you'll earn some money. Don't worry, Yvonne, we'll manage together. And for the first time during all this time, Yvonne suddenly felt the release of her heavy, painful tension. The fear for the future disappeared. She would manage. The world was not without kind people, and the living proof of that sat in front of her now. Thank you, Teresa, she smiled, and suddenly felt bitter tears streaming down her cheeks. Now, don't cry, the woman said sternly, immediately patting her ward's head. That's what we're here for, to help each other. How else can we live? I'm just a little ashamed, Yvonne admitted. I just came here to spend some time, to remember my childhood. But it turned out as if I was asking for help. Teresa nodded and smiled. And what are you ashamed of that? Remember, girl, something I read somewhere myself, and it stuck in my memory forever. If you ask for help, it doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're not alone in this world. That's right, Yvonne, that's it. And here's another thing. By the time our baby is born, you will have had the apartment for 5 years. You can do the next. Move in with us, live in the shelter, and rent out the apartment. With the benefits and work, a reasonably decent amount will accumulate. Then you can go to college, and you won't have to struggle anymore. You'll earn a decent living. Yvonne smiled through her tears, nodded, and thanked Teresa. It's amazing how things turn out. Teresa was the only person who supported her in such a difficult moment. And yet, who is Yvonne to Teresa? How many Yvonnes, Olias, Valerios, and Timoteos does she have? But that's just who Teresa Iglesias is. She won't leave anyone in trouble. Teresa also found a way for her to mop floors. I talked to a sponsor. He needs a cleaner for his office in the evenings. Will you go? Of course, he doesn't pay millions, but extra money won't hurt, right? You'll have a salary. The office is small, you can finish everything in about 40 minutes. You'll come after the end of the workday, around 7. So, what do you say? Thank you, Teresa, I'm all for it, Yvonne replied. Is the office far away? Just around the corner. And, by the way, you can start today. Payment is once a week, on Mondays, to your card. Yvonne was almost happy. Now she wasn't as afraid to look into the future. She worked as a cook at the shelter every other day with another girl. And now she had another easy job. Of course, it's infinitely far from the job of my dreams, she repeated to herself. But in our situation, there's no point in being proud. We have some money, and that's fine. And then the baby will be born, and we'll have benefits and money from renting the apartment, and maybe I'll even be able to study. She desperately wanted to share her joy with someone, at least with her roommate Nora. However, Nora had gone on yet another vacation with her boss lover and was unavailable for communication. A couple of months later, the friends were finally able to meet. But Yvonne quickly realized that sharing good news with Nora was indeed a bad idea. Mopping floors is for the destitute, Nora sneered. Sorry, Yvonne, but since you've already stooped to that, you can understand that it only goes downhill from here. You're all ready. She glanced disapprovingly at her friend's worn-out t-shirt and the skirt that was obviously chosen solely for its elastic waistband, lacking any other merits as a piece of tailoring. You're just one step away from rock bottom, she confidently concluded. Look at what you're wearing, for example. It's disgraceful, not clothing. Can't they make decent maternity clothes anymore? I'm dressed like this because I'm coming from work, and work happens to be floor cleaning. It would be silly to show up there in fancy attire and wave a mop around. Well, let's suppose that, Nora agreed thoughtfully. But what you're wearing, it's old and faded. And your hair? Look, she lifted a strand of her friend's hair with 2 fingers. Yvonne immediately recoiled. She never liked such touches. Your hair roots have grown out, it looks messy. You look like a beggar. And right now, I am a beggar, Yvonne didn't take offense. If I got fired, that means you didn't work well enough, you should have tried harder. No, it means that my boss's daughter needs to start her work career somewhere. So now she's working as a receptionist at the vet clinic, and I should have written a resignation letter and go in any direction I want. Although I left without a letter, nobody officially hired me for the job, so there's no one to dismiss. So, there are no openings for receptionists anywhere else? Like me? Yvonne gestured to her prominently rounded belly. You won't believe it, but no, they're not needed. Who wants a worker who will soon go on maternity leave? But us, the floor cleaners, they treat us more leniently, no paperwork, no maternity leave. You come, clean up, get paid. Money, Nora sneered. You call that money? You need so little. I wouldn't even lift a finger for those pennies. I have no choice, Yvonne calmly replied. When you have absolutely no money, you'll be grateful for having something to put on the plate. Yvonne bit her lip and fell silent for a long time. She could see that her friend didn't understand and judged her, which was even worse. It was even somewhat embarrassing to her for being so undemanding. However, Yvonne had long realized that for some reason, many people consider the struggle for survival to be beneath them and would rather sit and cry than take the opportunities presented to them. After all, Nora had a transitional moment in her life when she hadn't yet met her Mikelo, and she was let go from her job due to downsizing. At that time, she had offered Nora to talk to her boss about employment. They needed a second person at their veterinary clinic reception. Nora curiously asked with a mischievous smile, "How much will they pay me?" Upon learning the salary amount, she smirked. "That won't be enough for me, it's nothing. Plus, a 2-on-2 off schedule means you won't see daylight at all." But even a small amount of money is still better than nothing, Yvonne objected, feeling somewhat hurt by her friend's contempt. I wouldn't work for such a salary, Nora repeated slowly, emphasizing each word. Did I say something incomprehensible? At that moment, Yvonne thought that their close friendship was coming to an end. Nora had just humiliated her, implying that Yvonne settled for scraps, which Nora wouldn't even consider taking herself, even if she were currently penniless. The residue of her words left an unpleasant feeling, especially since it was clear that Nora had blurted it out without thinking, without an apology. It meant she had simply said what she intended. And now she emphasized once again that Yvonne was content with meager earnings. I can't understand why you want to demean me, she asked directly. Does it elevate you in your own eyes? Wouldn't you work for a small salary? Fine, but that's your decision. You can wait until you're offered something better. As for me, I choose to go and earn something, anything, to avoid starving while waiting for better times. I'm not demeaning you, Nora stammered, taken aback. I just mean that, well, I wouldn't work there. Can't I express my opinion? I would have somehow survived if you hadn't expressed it, Yvonne answered bitterly, and I would have been much happier to hear words of support from you. That evening she returned home with a heavy heart. That's it. She no longer had her friend Nora because... How could real friends behave like this? Well, there was no friendship left long ago, and Yvonne had known it from the very beginning. She only realized it today and suddenly felt immense relief, as if she had shed a heavy burden. Yvonne was lucky, her pregnancy was going smoothly with no morning sickness, scattered thoughts, or swelling. On the contrary, the expectant mother felt a surge of strength and energy that allowed her to work without getting too tired and even find time to prepare for exams. She still held on to the hope of becoming a veterinarian. Teresa encouraged and supported her in every way. You're doing great by not giving up. Now you have a child, and you need to raise them. And having a profession, especially such an in-demand one, will be useful to you regardless. After all, animals, just like humans, will always need medical care. Even if people in the city stop having pets, you can just gather your things and go work in the countryside. Cows and goats need veterinarians too. So prepare thoroughly, and remember, you're doing this not only for yourself, but also for your little one. You're like a mother to me, Yvonne said affectionately. Teresa smiled at her. And how else could it be? After all of you here, everyone who was raised here, are like children to me. Because you raise and guide each one of you. It's probably difficult to understand until you experience it yourself. I think I understand, Yvonne said. Because many of us, at least, never knew our own parents. We only had the shelter, caregivers, and you. And if someone looks at you as a mother figure, then you become one. The headmistress didn't respond, only stroked her head as she usually did. But Yvonne noticed tears glistening in the woman's eyes. Evenings she still went to clean the floors in the office. And although Yvonne had never seen the owner, money would arrive in her account every Monday, often with a slightly higher amount. These transfers were accompanied by a short note saying bonus. In general, cleaning the office was an easy job, she just had to dust and mop the floors. The boss's office didn't require any cleaning. He's like that, explained Teresa. He doesn't like anyone touching his things, he cleans up after himself. Well, that's his quirk. But it means less work for you. By the way, I already told him that in a couple of months, you won't be available for work, but he... What's his name, by the way? Yvonne asked. I haven't seen him, I don't even know his name. His name is Alejandro Castro, the supervisor replied. He told me he would wait for you for 3 months after giving birth. If you want to continue working, you can come back. Did you ask him about that? Yvonne smiled. Oh, please. Teresa exclaimed dramatically. No, he's just very pleased with your work and wants to support you. Do you think it's easy to find a good employee? Oh, Yvonne, it's always in short supply. Yvonne decided to accept this explanation without further questioning. Oh, and I almost forgot, Teresa suddenly remembered. He left yesterday for some business and will only be back tomorrow. He asked me to have you clean his office during these 2 days. But, for heaven's sake, don't move anything there. Let the desk be cluttered with papers and chairs lying around. It doesn't matter. Your job is just to dust and mop the floors, nothing else. Entering the boss's office was even intimidating. What if she accidentally touched something and then faced a stern reprimand from the boss? But as Yvonne found herself in the inner sanctum, she realized there was nothing to worry about. It was so perfectly tidy in there that she probably didn't even need to clean, but since she was asked to, well, she would. Yvonne took a dust cloth out of her work coat pocket. It should be noted that Alejandro was the kind of person who liked everything in order. For example, when hiring a new cleaner, he would always inquire about their clothing size to buy an appropriate work coat. And all the cloths, gloves, cleaning products, brooms, he kept them under control and made sure to purchase what was needed on time. Yvonne decided to start with the writing desk. There was almost nothing on it: a pen, a diary, and a photograph of a little girl in a frame, probably his daughter or maybe granddaughter. Yvonne quickly dusted the desk and was about to dust off the photo when, leaning closer, she froze. She knew that little girl in the picture and couldn't not know her. After all, a photo of this little girl, seemingly at the same age, was kept in Yvonne's personal file. And under the photo, there was a caption, Nieto Ana. Both of those photos featured her. Teresa, Yvonne didn't even realize she had pulled out her phone from her pocket and dialed the shelter manager's number. Teresa, can you hear me? Yes, Yvonne, Teresa responded calmly, as always. What happened? You told me to clean up in the boss's office. Yes, so? Did you break something? No, Yvonne said. But there's a photo of me as a child on his desk. A confused silence hung on the line. Yvonne, Teresa finally said, Are you sure you're not mistaken? Maybe it's a similar girl? You said that this person is a sponsor of our orphanage, Yvonne interrupted her. Has he ever personally visited the shelter? Could he have seen me there? The director paused for a moment. No, I don't recall that. He always sent couriers, but he never visited the orphanage. I once wanted to invite him to our New Year's celebration, but he responded strangely, saying that it would be difficult for him to see the children. I thought maybe he had experienced some terrible tragedy in his life. But Yvonne, why are we speculating? Let me call him right now and find out everything. Yvonne looked at the photograph of herself as a child again and, forgetting that the director couldn't see her, shook her head. No, there's no need, just no need. He will be back tomorrow, and I'll come to work early and talk to him. All right, Teresa agreed, but just to be safe, I'll go with you. Alejandro sat at his desk, looking at the photograph of Yvonne in her personal file and the picture in the frame. Teresa and Yvonne sat silently across from him. Finally, he sighed and covered his face with his hands. This is impossible, he said in a choked voice. This is absolutely impossible. Yvonne, my God, how can this be? Alba told me you drowned. Alba? Teresa asked. Who is that? The mother of my daughter, the man said angrily, if you can even call that wretch a mother. We were together, although I knew it wasn't serious. Alba wanted a richer man, and I was just a poor guy back then. She quickly realized she wouldn't get much from me, and it was all coming to an end. I was really infatuated with her at first, but then I realized she was just greedy for someone else's money. I even gave her a car, a white one, I remember it clearly, and it was mid-priced. As soon as Alba saw it, her lips curled, and she asked, Did you regret spending your money on me? I'm disappointed in you. That's when everything became clear to me, and I didn't worry anymore that this beauty would leave me. But then she comes running one day, screaming that she's pregnant, that it's my child. I shrugged it off. Honestly, I thought she just wanted, I don't know, to extort money from me again. Anyway, I sent her away, thinking I'd forget about it, and I did for a while. 2 years went by without me thinking about it. I was in the Czech Republic for business. That's how things kept me occupied for 2 years, but it doesn't matter. And then I felt, no, this isn't right. My heart isn't in the right place. I called her, but someone else answered the phone. I went to her house, found out some things. Apparently, she did give birth to a girl, but then she rented out the apartment and moved to a wealthy neighborhood herself. And she had a wealthy man with her, considerably older than Alba. And what about me? I wanted to see my daughter. I caught her, my ex-fiancée, to talk to her. And she told me that our daughter went to the village to visit her grandmother and drowned in the river. She said it while crying. Then she took this photo out of her purse and gave it to me. They found Ivan in the forest, the orphanage director sighed. The forester found her. The girl was completely alone. There was a note with her stating her name was Anna, that she was healthy, and that no one could take care of her. Alejandro gritted his teeth, that snake. She's not a woman, she's a witch. Alba? Ivan suddenly asked. Is that her name? Well, yes, supposedly she divorced that husband and then. I don't know what happened next. She has a veterinary clinic. Yes. He slammed his open palm on the table. Let's go to her, all of us. Alejandro, Teresa tried to calm him down. Maybe it's better not to rush. Cool down. Teresa, he turned to her, and the woman involuntarily stepped back. So much pain was in his gaze. For so many years, I thought my daughter, that she drowned. And all this time, she was living in the orphanage, without knowing her father or mother. And I couldn't look at other children calmly, my heart ached. If it wasn't for chance, we would have never found each other. And you tell me to calm down. Ivan, he took his daughter's hand. My dear, you shouldn't be nervous. It's better for you to stay at home. I'll handle your mother myself, and then I'll come to you and tell you everything. And you stay with Teresa. Right, Teresa perked up. It's your business. We don't need any extra stress with Ivan. We'll stay together, have some coffee and pastries. Okay? Alejandro, Dad, Ivan pleaded with her father. Maybe you don't need to go either. Maybe just forget about it. It's in the past. The most important thing is that everything is good now. Soon you'll even become a grandpa. Why dwelling on the past? The man hugged his daughter and gently kissed the top of her head. I'll be back very soon, Ivan, he promised. Meanwhile, Alba was almost completely happy. She felt 20 years younger, and this happened every time she managed to attract a new lover. This time, it was a stunning character, a true Viking. If I had known that such handsome clients come to my clinic, she purred, standing on her tiptoes to reach the guy's lips, I would show up at work more often. What's your little kitty's name? Honey, Olivio smiled and touched Alba's lips with his fingertip. Well, this lady is clearly a target for hunting. I wonder how old she is. You can't tell from her face. She's probably squandering the kind of money he couldn't even dream of. Honey. It's my favorite treat. By the way, how about taking a trip to the land of Eastern sweets together? Oh, come on, Alba, where would I get that kind of money? SHH, darling, I'll pay for everything myself, and you don't need to worry about it. Suddenly, she stumbled and looked scared at the door. Voices were coming from behind it. No one can visit Alba. I can. A male voice barked in response, and the door swung open with a crash. Alejandro looked at the towering guy with disdain, to whom Alba was clinging. Get out of here, he casually said. Wait outside. I need to have an important conversation with Alba. Olivio looked at Alba in confusion and noticed her slight nod, then he left the office. What do you want, Alejandro? The woman asked, appearing completely calm. Is this how you behave? Bursting into my office, distracting me from important matters. And what's all the fuss about? You told me, he began, looking her straight in the eyes, you told me that our daughter was dead, that she drowned. That's what happened, agreed Alba. And you came here just to remind me of this tragedy? then there was no need to try so hard. I never forgot. That you wretch, abandoned a 2-year-old girl alone in the woods? And you didn't care whether she lived or died. The fact that the forester found her was incredible luck. You are a despicable, repulsive monster. You could never forget that. Just tell me, why did you do it? Why didn't you take her to an orphanage if she was such a burden to you? Why did you leave her to the mercy of fate? Alba remained impassive. She took a long, slim cigarette from a case and lit it leisurely. Because, she calmly replied, there would have been consequences, and I had to be pure for my fiancé. I have no idea what he would have done if he found out I had a child. He might have kicked me out, or maybe not. But I couldn't take the risk. If it weren't for my marriage, where would I be now? Living in some dilapidated dump with leaky pipes, without money, without prospects. Was I supposed to choose poverty? I wonder how many years you'll spend in prison, where undoubtedly you belong. How long will you get when your dirty, dark secret is exposed? Just think about it, a little girl, defenseless, alone in the dark forest, abandoned by her own mother. What punishment do you think such a woman deserves? And what headlines will be everywhere? Owner of a thriving veterinary clinic cold-bloodedly attempted to kill her own child. Who will come here after that? Who will trust their hamster to a clinic run by a child murderer? Get out of this city, Alba. Shut down this lousy business, take your gigolo and go far away. And don't ever come back. If you step foot in this city, consider yourself warned about what awaits you. And without saying another word, he turned sharply and left the office. Olivio immediately appeared in the doorway. Well, what interesting news I just heard, he said, looking significantly at the woman. And I wonder what I should do with it. Several months passed. Alba sat on the sand, gazing at the sea waves. Now all she had to do was sit here and watch. Olivio, her beloved Viking, turned out to be quite the blackmailer. He overheard a conversation behind the door and then started demanding money for his silence. The sums kept growing and becoming more substantial until the moment came when there was nothing left to pay. Olivio, completely satisfied and enriched, promptly disappeared in an unknown direction, leaving Alba with just one dress and not a penny to her name. Now she came to the beach every day and simply sat on the shore, waiting for darkness to fall. People dispersed, leaving behind a heap of scraps in the trash bins. When Alba finally dared to reach into the pile of garbage, a plump rat sprang out of the container with a wild squeal. Alba recoiled, but the rat dashed past her. It was terrifying to approach the trash bin. What if there were more fearless rat relatives inside? But the hunger was unbearable. And then Alba noticed that on top of the heap of garbage lay a partially eaten piece of bread. Armed with a stick, she hooked the bread and dragged it onto the ground. That night, Alba fell asleep with a satisfied stomach, and the feeling of alleviated hunger was so wonderful that the trash rats no longer frightened her. The opportunity to find any food was far more important. But cold weather was approaching, and she knew that with the end of the beach season, she would have to seek shelter in a homeless shelter. Getting in there was another challenge. It was said that they didn't accept everyone, giving preference to established residents who would definitely not cause trouble. Alba cupped some seawater in her palms and tried to wash herself and tidy her hair. She needed to make a good impression on the shelter administration. It was certainly not easy, but she would try her best. The homeless shelter was in a good spot, in an industrial zone with such pollution that it felt like you weren't breathing the air but rather consuming it, struggling to swallow each chunk. But it was understandable, really. All these shelters, they fell under the Social Services Department, and bureaucrats in every country hated spending money. It was their professional deformation. Alba looked around and quickly stepped towards the long line of poorly dressed people. Apparently, that's where the homeless shelter was accepting people. She quietly joined the back of the queue and tried to listen to the hushed conversations. Maybe she could find out how to behave to ensure she would be admitted for sure. Hey, what are you doing here? Alba startled in surprise. Yes, I'm talking to you. In an instant, someone's firm grip clutched onto her dress. Did everyone see that? I just turned the corner, and she's already here, this audacious woman. Let me go, you idiot. Alba wriggled, attempting to break free from the stranger's strong grasp. Let me go, I said. She twisted and bit her tormentor's hand. Ah! She bit me. Are you drunk or something? You're attacking people. Alba, breathing heavily, brushed the hair away from her face. You could have politely said that I took your place. She investigated the face of the tall man. Olivio? Yes, it was Olivio, ragged and dirty, emitting an even stronger stench than the dumpster. Look, we meet again, he smirked crookedly. All your money went to pay off debts. Now I'm here in the shelter to wait out the cold. Well, let's get in line together, or someone else might come and get ahead of us. They stood in line, one behind the other, now relying on the hope of getting into this shelter and finding some kind of roof over their heads, even if only temporarily. And no one in this world worried about them, no one, because they fully deserved it all. Was it karma? Boomerang? Yes, that's right. It was punishment for two lonely and lost souls.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe.